All right, and welcome. So now we're going to start looking into Active Directory. This is where we really start to go from the junior to mid tier level penetration tester when you start working inside of networks, looking at Active Directory and things like that. There is a lot of things within Active Directory. We cannot cover all of it within this course. Some of it is some really high-end stuff. So we're just going to go through and we're going to look at some of the lower end to mid tier stuff that we can cover within this course that doesn't really take a lot of understanding every single thing about Active Directory. So let's go ahead and let's start off with a null session. Now, a null session, what that means is just that I don't have any credentials, right? I could be in the internal network and I have no credentials, okay? Um, then we also have something called a assumed breach test, all right? And that assumed breach one is when you actually get credentials, such as a user, and the company wants to see what can a user actually do on their network. But we're going to start off with no credentials at all as a null user, and we're going to see can we actually obtain information within this network. Now, there's a couple tools that really stand out when it comes to Active Directory. We have Bloodhound, we have NetExec, which is the newer version of CrapMapExec. So if you're still using CrapMapExec, NetExec is the newer version, and they have updated it much more. And we Impacket is another tool that we're going to be using quite often within this. When we finally get into PowerShell, you're going to see Mimikatz being used, Rubius, and things like that. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start it off. So we'll start off with NetExec. With NetExec, you either type in NetExec or you could type in NXC. We're just going to mostly stick to NXC. So I do have the domain controller obviously up and running. So we're doing NXC SMB, and then we're just going to put in 192.168.0.98, tac U, tac P, and then we'll try tac shares. Okay. Now a little thing to understand is when you do an NXC SMB, we can hit enter right here, and it'll actually tell us all the different things it can do. That's kind of ugly, so let's do a tac H, and it can tell us all the different things that it can do, right? So we can look at shares, groups, users, interfaces. We can look at all these things like right here, okay, for enumeration. However, NetExec can actually do more, okay? We can also do a tac L, capital L, and we can list modules. So people are able to submit modules, and those modules will be used, and you can try to maybe do a coercing attack, okay? Oh, they're going to remove DSS coerce? That's sad. I like that one. I like that attack right there. But we can enum any AVs on there, right? We can enum for the certificate authority, see if GPPR log or GPP password works. We can just go through and try different things. You see we have low privilege modules. We also have high privilege modules, right, that require administrator. Okay, with these high privileged ones, we can drop the LSA. We can drop the SAM, kind of like a secret dump kind of thing, right? Check for credentials in the IS pool. Okay, so there's a lot of things that we can do within this when we utilize that TAC-L. But we're just going to start off with NXC SMB 192.168.0.98, so the IP address, right? And we don't know this user yet. This user to us doesn't exist yet. All right, we'll do that. And then TAC P, we'll do that. Okay. And then we'll just go ahead and we'll do a tac shares. And we'll see, can we look at any shares as a null user, right? Because we see this plus tag right here. That means that we logged in. We did log in, and then we get status access denied. Now, something with Windows, sometimes it won't do a null username. Sometimes you have to put in a new username, something like anonymous, or maybe guest, okay? I like to use anonymous because a lot of times the guest account is deactivated, right? It's shut down, so I like to use anonymous. And we can see that we do see some shares now. Now, if we were able to read and write this admin share, that means that we are already administrator on the system. All right. Obviously, we cannot, so we can't do that. We see IPC. Now, usually when you can read IPC, you can also drop the users. On this one, you cannot. So if we do a tac users, we're not going to be able to get anything. All right, we'll log in, but we're not going to see any users. See, it says that we're a guest, but we can't drop them, right? So from here, we also see that we have a share that we can read and write to, which we will be looking at later on to drop a file in there. Okay. Now that we know that information, let's go ahead and let's try it with LDAP search. Okay, so LDAP search, we're actually going to save this into a file called a.txt also. LDAP search, that can go through, and that can also try to look at people. Okay, so we're going to look at an object class of person. So we're going to try to look for all the users on this machine. We couldn't do it with NetExec, right? or we couldn't do it with SMB. We haven't tried it with NXC LDAP yet, because if I do an NXC and I say enter, we can see if there's a lot more than SMB here, right? We have a lot more protocols than just that. So we can try an NXC LDAP and hit enter. If I type in LDAP correctly, tac help, right? And we can see, are we able to drop users with this? Supposedly we can enumerate enabled domain users. We could try that. So we can say tac u. I haven't actually tested this yet on this machine, so I don't know what's going to happen. Anonymous, tac p tac users. Let's see what happens. Oh, needs a target. Obviously it does. All right, 192.168.0.98. Okay, and it's still not showing any users here, right? We're not seeing any users. But what about LDAP search? So there's many tools that you can use, and a lot of those tools, they differ just like a little bit, and so you might be able to do something with one tool that you can't do with another tool. Okay. Something else I do want to point out, both with SMB and LDAP and everything else you're going to do, we do get the domain name in here. So we do see that domain name is cyberranges.local, and the computer name is cyberranges.dc. Right, so we do see those two things. We can also see the computer name like right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just try to see if LDAP search works, if we could drop users like this, and we can. All right, so we see all these different users in here, right? A lot of different users, okay? So let's go ahead and let's just try just find user names. So we're going to save this into a.text. Now, obviously, if I cat that a.text, okay, and then what I'm going to do, I can go ahead and grep tech IA for SAM account or SAM account name or whatever, and we get a whole bunch of the names, right? So we get SAM account name and SAM account type here. So let's go ahead and do SAM account name, and then we'll save that into b.text. Now I can go ahead and I cat that b.text, and I should have all the usernames. Okay, so let's go ahead and we will cut tag D. So we're going to cut out the colon here, and then we're going to take tag F2. So this side would be 1. If we cut like where this colon's at, this is going to be 1, the SAM account name, and then 2 would be over here. Okay, now do notice it does have that space, so that's going to be side 2. So we want to get rid of SAM account name, and we just want to keep this over here. That's what that tag F is going to do. We're going to do that on b.text, and we'll save that to c.text. Now if I go ahead and I cat c.text, we have all these usernames, but we have that space in there, right? So we don't want that space. So let's go ahead and cat c.text now, and then we'll go ahead and we'll do a sed command. This sed command like right here, that's going to delete all the white space within a file within Linux. So we hit enter. Now we can cat users.text, and we see that we have all these usernames, right? So now we have a list of users. With a list of users, we could do different things, right? We could try to brute force, right? We do a password spray. Okay, so what we could do is we could have one password, maybe like summer 2024, exclamation point or something like that, and we could just try to spray all these users. We can do that with the exec. We say NXC SMB 192.168, boom, boom, okay. And we say tag u is going to actually be users.text, okay. We can put the file in there, and we can say tag p is, I don't know, we can say something like let me see. I'm trying to think of one of the actual passwords that we got before. So just to make it a little bit easier, we'll say Chester, right? Let's try Chester. Chester, okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to just let that run. We could also do a stop on success if we want to, but boom, okay? Or continue on success, we actually get that user. What if we do tac continue on success? Okay, if we do a continue on success here, we can see that it continues on to try, okay? Now, something that we want to look at before we do a password spray like that is we want to look at the password policy. So what we could do is we could try to enumerate that password policy with with an anonymous user. Are we going to be able to? I have no idea. We should, because we could log into SMB supposedly, right? So we could do a pass poll. If I can spell pass right. Right, so we do a pass poll, and we actually cannot. Right, we could with that user now, that Chester password link right there, we could with that user, but we'll figure that out later on. So now that we have a list of users, let's try to do something called asrep roasting. What asrep roasting means is pre-auth not required. So whenever you create a user with an Active Directory, you can click on a little radio box at the very bottom. It says pre-auth, Kerberos pre-auth not required. That will allow us to be able to grab a ticket from a user without actually having access to the system. So I'll show you what I mean by this. First thing we're going to do is we're going to curb root. All right, we don't need to technically do this. This is just something I like to do is make sure that the users are actual users. Okay, well we type in that. Oh, if I could, man, I think the machine's messing up again because I've been using it for a while now. So we'll curb root. All right, and we see we have an expired password here. That's something we want to look into. And we also have a valid user, Madalena Amber, and not pre-auth. So that means that there's no pre-auth required. So now what we could do is to get mp users.py. We're going to say no password. Our users file is our users.txt file that we created. Our domain controller IP address is 192.168.0.98, and then our domain name, cyberranges.local. Remember, we got that from netexec before we did anything else, right? So we got that from SMB and LDAP. Go ahead, enter here, and we see that we have a hash here. Okay, now I already cracked this hash, so what I have to do is I have to remove my john.pop file. So I can go ahead and locate john.pop. Or else it's going to say that I already cracked it, and then I could actually look at that file and actually see that it has already been cracked, and let's go ahead and grab it. I won't be doing this in real life. This is just for instructional purposes. I would just look at the file and see what the password was, right? And we're also going to locate hashcat.pot because I did both. Or is it hashcat.pot file? Okay, maybe it's not in there. That's okay. All right, so now what we can do from here is we can go ahead and we can echo that hash into hash.txt. Then we go ahead and use John and John on hash.txt, and we'll use the word list of user share word list rocky.txt. Share word list rocky.txt. Right, and we see that that password is Chester. Okay, so we know that Madalena Amber's password is Chester. We can also use hashcat. Hashcat, hash.txt, right? And then we're just going to put in our word list here. Now, one of the things with hashcat is we could also use rules. Okay, we can make our own rules, things like that. That's going to be for your mid-tier stuff. That's going to probably be if, as you continue furthering on your training and things like that, you'll learn about rule lists with hashcat. But we see that we have Chester here. Awesome. So now we know this user's password, and we know this along with that password, we know this user's password, right? So now we can go ahead and we can start to see what can that user actually do, right? So let's do an NXC again. There's a few things in here, right? First off, if the user's not administrator, they're most likely not going to be able to RDP. Okay. If port 5900 is not open, then VNC is not going to work. If port 22 is open, SSH isn't going to work. So you got to go through and just kind of figure out what will actually work, right? We didn't run a rust scan on this yet. I totally missed that part. So we'll go ahead and we'll run a quick rust scan on it. And we'll see that port 22 is not open. We'll see that remote desktop is not open, right? 3389 isn't open. We do have 5985, which is WinRM. So we could technically, we could say NXC WinRM, right? Put in our IP address, that user, that password, hit enter, and we get this pond. When we see pond, that means that we can utilize that service. So what we should be able to do is evil WinRM now. Tac I, the IP address. Tac U, the username. Tac P, the password. And we are now within the local system. I'm now in PowerShell. I can ipconfig, I can dir, I can do an ls tac force to see files that are hidden, whatever I want to do, right? We can CD in the C drive. Awesome, okay? So now we found a whole bunch of things in here, right? I'm going to exit out of here, go ahead and clear that. The next thing that we could also do with this is we could try to utilize what's called curve roasting. So with curve roasting, what we're doing is we're trying to grab services hashes, their tickets, right? So like an MS SQL service or an HTTP service or Exchange service or some type of service, right, that they may have on an Active Directory environment. When we're trying to grab those tickets, now when we grab that ticket, their password for that service is inside of that ticket. Okay. I've been in many internal networks where the administrator is also a service. So if you're able to crack the password, the hash there, if you're able to crack that, you now have the administrator's hash, right? Or that user, like HTTP service, has way too many permissions. So what we can do is we can actually crack that hash, grab that user's password, and then be able to go on and utilize that user for things. Now we cannot pass the hash with a Kerberos ticket. That's not going to be something we're going to be able to do here, right? So not yet. We can utilize NTLM relay to be able to do things, but utilizing a Kerberos ticket with how we're going to do this, we cannot pass the hash, right? So let's go ahead and do a get user spns.py. All right, if I enter here, we'll see that's pretty much the same as that command that we did for asrep roasting, except for this time we're actually going to give it a username and password, right? So we'll do our domain, which is cyberranges.local / our username, which was, I already forgot. Let's go ahead and we'll say NXC. There we go. Something that you should always do is keep all of this in a file. Okay, then we're just going to say at 192.168.0.98. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this in a file. I'd like to just do an echo, and I'm just going to say that Chester into user pass.text. All right, then I remember that that's right where I find all my user names and passwords. And then if I find like an administrator, I'll make like a little note in there that that's an administrator's password. So now we have our get user SPNs, all right, for our service principal names, right? And we just go ahead and hit enter here. Before we hit enter though, we do want to do a cat etc host, and we want to make sure that cyberranges.local and the IP address is within our etc host. If it is not, you do a nano etc host, and you could add that in there. You have to do a sudo nano, etc host, and you can add that in there and put that into the file. Now let's go ahead and we can enter here. All right, it didn't like that one. Let's go ahead and get rid of the @ sign. Sometimes it doesn't like it. Okay. Sometimes you have to put in DCIP. Sometimes you have to put in @ sign. It changes all the time. So we see we have 3 services here, right? We have Exchange service, HTTP service, and MS SQL service. We can request their tickets now, and we get their hashes back, right? We get Kerberos 5 TGS Tiggrain service hash there. So we take all of these hashes, and we can try to crack all these. All right, we'll go ahead and echo these into a file again, like hash.txt again. We'll go ahead and we can use John or hashcat. We'll use both John hash.txt. We'll say user share wordless rocky.txt. All right, and we see that we cracked all 3 of those, Carlos, Maverick, and a Xerti. Okay, and we could also use hashcat, and hashcat's going to be a little bit friendlier, and it's actually going to show us what user has what password, right? So we can see that MS SQL service, their password as Xerti, like right there, right? So we can now go through and we can put all these into a file and say, hey, we also have these guys like right here. So continuing on with this, and we have now gotten into Evil WinRM. We have now looked at Kerber roasting. We've looked at asrep roasting. We've looked at null sessions. We've looked at grabbing users. We've been looking at a lot of things so far. So what we're going to do now is we can go ahead and we can try to maybe look at user descriptions. That's another way to be able to find passwords. Sometimes administrators will put the password for something in a user description, or the description may give too much information. So we can do that with netexec or LDAP search. We'll do NXC SMB again, and we're just going to say we're going to put in our username and our password. We'll do a tac users, but we can see In the description, we have a company default password, reset ASAP, but we do have a new user-generated password. We see this like right here. So we now know Marita Kimball's password also. Okay, so that's just another password that we know, something else that we can mess with, right? So we can then echo Marita.Kimball into, and then append that file, right? User pass.txt. Let me make sure I spelled Marita right, M-A-R-I-T-A. M-A-R-I-T-A. All right, cool. K-I-M-B-A, two L's, double L. All right, awesome. So now I have her in that file. So now if I cat that user pass.txt, I now see I have both of those, and I can then test her and see what can she do, right? She may have more permissions, something like that. I can test all these guys up here and see what can they do. Are they administrators? Do they have, what rights do they all have? Continuing on with enumeration, there's also a tool called Bloodhound. Now, in your book, it does show how to start Bloodhound with Neo4j to be able to get that up and running and everything like that. But what we're going to do is we're going to do our sudo Neo4j console. And then what we'll also do is we'll go ahead and we'll open up another tab here. We'll say Bloodhound. Once we open up Bloodhound, I have mine to auto login. Right, if you want to change from dark mode or light mode, you can click on settings and do whatever. Okay. If you already have information in here, you can clear the database. And what we want to do is we want to run Bloodhound Python. So we can say Bloodhound Python, and we just need to give it a user, right? So we have Manolita Amber, password Chester, the name server, right, which is 192.168.0.98, our domain, cyberrange.local, and we want to do a collection method of all. Okay, there's different collection methods you could do. All is very loud. It's kind of like a Hail Mary. You'll never use this on a red team. This is only for penetration testing. And as soon as you use it, the company's going to know that you used it. Okay. So now we have all that. We can go ahead and ls-la. All right. We see that we have these JSON files in here. Now all we need to do is we need to upload those. If you're having a problem uploading them, you can do a sudo it's update alternatives. And let me go ahead and grab the actual command here just so I don't mess it up. I thought I put it inside your notes. I'm pretty sure I did. I'm just looking through it like real quick just to find it within your notes. I do not want to mess this up for you all with this. Okay, so it's sudo update alternatives and then config and then what you want to update. So if you're having problems with uploading the information in there, you do a sudo tac update, or just tac update alternatives. I always forget the command. Sudo notac, excuse me, there we go. Update alternatives, config Java, and then you can tell it what you want to update to. All right. So Bloodhound's a little bit old, so we're just going to say 11. All right, Java 11. All right, they did release a new Bloodhound. It's called Bloodhound Community Edition. You can go ahead and use that if you want. It makes new Neo4j and everything a lot easier, right? It makes compiling a lot easier. I just don't think that it makes cleaning the database as easy. So now we clear that database, we can go ahead and upload our data, right? And we'll go to Home, Active Directory, and we'll grab all those. We'll say Enter. And we'll start seeing them upload into there. And now we have a user, right? We do have a user, and that user's name, if we go on ls-la, we actually have a few users like right now. We see that is Manolita Amber, so we can go ahead and head over here. We start typing in mad, and we see that it's Manolita Amber. Now, I do understand this is a little bit difficult to see. There's nothing really I can do about this. Okay. If we click on that user, we'll see that the information over here changes, the node information. Once that node information changes, we can go ahead and we can scroll down, and we can see, okay, hey, what memberships does this user have? Okay, they have accounting and domain users, so we know that they're a part of the accounting group, right? Let's see their unenrolled memberships, okay? So because they're part of domain users also has everyone, users, pre-Windows 2000 compatible access, authenticated users, and certificate service all underneath domain users. Accounting doesn't seem to have anybody underneath them there. All right. We can also see if it has a derivative local admin rights. We do not. We can also see outbound object control. So this is like where we start getting into ACLs. We have a first degree object control over something. So what is this? So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, there's our user. We have some type of control. We have a generic all over sales. We have a right DACL over executives. So we can actually right click on this green line here. We say help, Linux abuse. But we can actually copy these commands in there, change the information that needs to be changed, and we can abuse that ACL that we have, right? So on this like right here, we can actually add ourselves to this group, the sales group. For right DACL, we go to help, Linux abuse. Okay, we do a DACL edit, right? Which will then allow us to add ourselves to the executives group. So this one user can add themselves to both sales and executives and then have whatever rights sales and executives have. We can click on it. What we can also do is we can also right click on this user and we can mark them as owned. We own that user, right? We know their username and password. Who else do we own? We own HTTP service, right? So we say HTTP service here. We own them. We own MS SQL service because we have other hashes. We have other passwords. We can mark them as owned. We have Exchange service. And as you start to go through these, you want to own these different places, okay? You want to say that you own these different things. And I'll show you why. We also have Marita Kimball. We also own that person. So once we do own, we can actually do analysis and we can try to see if there's any way to be able to become a domain admin from our owned principals. So shortest path from owned principals. Okay, so we could go to these different owned principals like Exchange service, okay, nothing there. There might be nothing for any of them. And that's okay. Messed up. Okay, shortest path from owned principals, boom, boom, boom. Madalena, nope. Marita, nope. And finally, MS SQL service, nothing, okay? So it doesn't look like there's any way to be able to get to domain admin from the users that we have right now. Okay, we also have this shortest path to domain admins from old principals, nothing there. Shortest path to high value targets. All right, this is a lot of information like right here, right? But we can start to break it down. We see that IT admins can do a DC sync attack. Okay, that's what we just saw on that line, like right there was DC sync. All right, we can see that enterprise admins, obviously they can do stuff, right? We have administrators over here, they can obviously do stuff, right? But anyone that we know now that's part of the IT admins group, or is Marilyn Stormy or Nolene Janine, any of these two owners, we can actually do stuff. They're part of IT admins group, and this one can also DC sync. Two of them can actually DC sync to cipher ranges, which DC sync will allow us to drop all the hashes on the domain. So we know now what we want to look for, right? We also know that we want to look for backup operators, anyone within that group. We want to look for, looks like print operators, anyone in this group, right? Obviously administrators, server operators, another group that we want to look into, right? So all these different things we want to look into, all these different groups, and we want to just kind of pad this in the back of our brain, right? Like, yep, I know that those two users are part of the IT admins group. IT admins have a lot of rights over this domain, and we can go ahead and we can do whatever we want from there. So there's a lot of information you can find on Bloodhound. You can even, within Bloodhound, you can even add in your own queries. That's something for a later on course, something that you'll learn throughout your time. We can also find corrosible users and ASREP roastable users. So here's our ASREP ones, right? We didn't see Nathaniel Edwina. We didn't see that user. So let's go ahead and let's try to ASREP roast that user, like right there, because we only found one of them. From what I saw, there was only one user that could be ASREP roast. So let's go ahead and do a get users SPN again. We'll try one more time with this request. Oh, excuse me. Get NP users. And the only one that I'm seeing is this one like right here. Maybe there is another one. Maybe I was going too fast. Okay, so we're not actually seeing that user anywhere. Are they even in our file? They may not even be in our file here. So let's go ahead and try to find Nathaniel. So we'll go ahead and we'll do this, or we can actually cat user.text grep tech IA for NATH. Okay, so they are in there. So what we can do from here is we can actually just give it a user. So we can say get np users, and we, instead of no pass and everything else, we do attack H, right? We can give it a user, and we can then utilize that user to try to find all this information. So we'll say get np users, our domain, right? Which is going to be cyberranges.local. Okay, we'll come up here, slash our user, who is going to be Malia Amber, her password, which is Chester. And since we have this in our Etsy host, we should be able to hit enter here. Okay, and we do actually see this user. So we can go ahead and we can try to do a request and see if it can actually pull down that user. And it looks like it's actually having a problem with that user like right there, pulling that information down, right? So we can see that's actually having a problem. They are part of that accounting group, so they are in the same group as her. So we're not seeing anything like that. That's probably why we're getting a problem here, because it has like right here that there's a depreciation warning, represent date times, boom, boom, boom. Okay, let's go ahead and let's try to see if we can't password expired, change password to reset. Oh, that may be another reason why. Let's go ahead and use our other user there. Or you know why? Because that user looks like that they actually have a messed up password, change password to reset. So they may actually have a messed up password. That may be why we can't pull them down. Because we have a Kerberos session error because of that, like right there. So that's something that, you know, we now know that that user's password is messed up, which we may be able to change it with SMB password, but that's also going to be for later on because we're not actually actively exploiting the system right now. Right, so going back, this was a longer one. So going back, how did we start, right? We started off with that null SMB session. We tried to get null SMB. We saw that we can read and write to common, right? We tried to drop users, we couldn't. We tried to drop users with netexec LDAP, we weren't able to. However, then we used LDAP search and we were able to drop users. Okay, once we used the LDAP search, we were able to drop users. From there, then we utilized Kerberos and also getMP users to be able to do ASREP roasting. Once we did our ASREP roasting, we were able to crack that password utilizing both Hashcat and John the Ripper. We saw that we did have more rights on the shares after that. And then we also saw that we could win RM in. We did a quick evil win RM, and then we exit out of there. We also ran Bloodhound on the system, right, with Bloodhound Python. We got Bloodhound up and running. And we also went ahead and started to enumerate the different users in there with Bloodhound. From there, we also did Kerberos roasting. Okay, so we found more users, we found more passwords, and we also looked at descriptions within our LDAP search. There's another tool that we can also use for LDAP, and it is called LDAP domain dump. Okay, so LDAP domain dump. Then we from here we say LDAP / 192.168.0.98. Now before I even do this, actually I want to make a directory LDAP just in case it actually does dump. Sometimes this works, sometimes it does not. Just like that netexec one we just saw and everything else. We can enter here. Okay, and it looks like it didn't like it. We can do a quick lstech LA. Yep, it did not like that at all. Okay, maybe we have to put in the port 389. Okay, still doesn't seem to really like it very much. All right, LDAP domain dump is also kind of an older tool, but let me go ahead and let me do a quick search for it just to make sure I am actually putting this in correctly. And since we did actually find a username and password, we could actually put in a username and password and try it that way also. So we said LDAP domain dump doesn't work, but LDAP search does. So let's try LDAP domain dump again. Tag U, our username. Tag P, our password. We can go ahead and try that. All right, username must include a domain. All right, we'll say it was cyberranges.local. And I don't know which way it wants the domain. If it's like that, yep. So slash, even though it says like that, slash has to be this way. Or we need it to actually be in quotes. It might have to be in quotes like right here. All right, needed to be in quotes. So now that we did this, Now, remember, you can also do this anonymously. You may be able to, so that's something else to look at. If port 389 is shut down, use the 636, right? That's LDAPs. So let's go ahead and let's look at this now. We say ls-la, and we see this HTML file like right here. So we can go ahead and we can say Firefox at domain users.html. And we have all these domain users, who they belong to, what type of account they are, and we also get the descriptions again. So we can actually go through, we can look at the descriptions, and we can find, just like we did before, that password that we found before, right? So we have our new user-generated password like right here. Boom. Okay, awesome. Now, what if we do not know a username list? What if we don't have anything like that? We're not getting anywhere, right? We can always try Kerberos. So we can say Kerberos. We can enter here. All right. In Kerberos, what we can do is we can just give it a users list. So we can say tag users, and we're going to say /user share sec list usernames x80 net 10 million usernames.txt. Now, obviously, this is going to cause a lot of traffic, right? It's going to cause a lot of noise and things like that. So this, again, is not something you're going to do during the red team, but during a penetration test, this could be something that you do, you know. So we'll say domain is summary.local. We do have that in our Etsy host, so it might take it. We'll see. But we do have that in our Etsy host. If we didn't have an Etsy host, we probably have to put in a DCIP, but it looks like it took it with just that, like right there. And this guy's going to go through and he's going to try different usernames. All right. So another thing that we can see, there you go. I found guest, right? Awesome. I don't know what's up with the stupendous lately. Everything seems to have changed to do this little stupendous thing. I think it's pretty funny, right? But we can also start to do, open source intelligence, right? We could look at their LinkedIn pages. We can look at their company website. We can try to find their company Facebook, things like that. And once we see how their email addresses are set up, like if it's first dot last or first initial dot last name or just first name, we start seeing those things. That's usually also how their Active Directory environment's set up. So we can start to add names in and we could see, hey, is there a way to be able to, utilize Kerberos and see do these users actually exist? Okay, something we can, a way that we can actually make that a little bit easier is by utilizing. Oh, Kerberos seemed to have frozen my Kali, so I might just have to just talk about this one. But we can go out to GitHub, and what we can do is we can actually download a username generator, right? So you put in, let's say, Madalena Amber here. You would put her username in to that username generator, and then it'll spit out a whole bunch of different ways that most companies utilize usernames. And so you can put all those into a file. From there, you can send that up, just that one person, because you know that person works there. And then you can see how does the company actually utilize their usernames and what is their formatting for that username. Okay, so I have a lot of fun in Active Directory. I hope you guys are going to have a lot of fun too. This is just the beginning of it, and I will talk to you all later.